Okay, welcome back everybody. Now that we've done our PowerPoint presentation and maybe you've had a chance to answer some of the homework questions on the Google form, let's do a quick little lab exercise to get a little hands on the keyboard experience with automation as it might apply very simply to an automated attack. So you'll notice here I'm using my Kali Linux virtual machine environment. So I encourage you to do this within your Kali Linux virtual environment as well. I believe you've been instructed in some of our other modules to set this up. So hopefully you've got that up and running okay by now. I'll assume that you do. For the purposes of the lab, we're going to make use of this Python program called test.py that you see here on the desktop. I'll provide a copy of the source code in the material, so you should have seen in the zip file you got or however you're accessing the online course materials, this file test.py. This is going to be a little template that we're going to start from. So let's first of all get some familiarity with our Kali Linux environment here and go ahead and open up. You'll see the second icon here on the taskbar is the terminal window. Let's open up a terminal. Maybe many of you guys are highly experienced in working on the Linux command line. For some of you, you might be really only used to working with what we call GUI environments. That's graphical user interface, where you're using your mouse to click on everything. But in the world of cybersecurity and hacking and programming, the command line is really still a major environment that you need to acquire some comfort level working in and some understanding of how it works. So let's work from the command line a little bit here to do this lab exercise. And so you're welcome to just kind of follow along on your own device. Maybe you're watching this first and then going back to your device. You could do a little split screen, however it works best for you. But you'll notice right here that currently we're in the root level of our operating system. So the first thing we want to do if we want to access this program here, we're going to want to get to the desktop. So we're going to use the cd command that stands for change directory, and then we'll type in desktop here. But a little shortcut that you can do is you can type in the first couple of letters, in this case like DES, and then hit the tab key, and you'll it'll auto-fill in the directory that you might want to switch to. And again, if you're very new to this environment, directory and folder are kind of interchangeable. So now we're at the desktop. Okay, if we use the ls command, that'll list all the files in this directory. And if we do that, you'll see here we've got test.py. Now your Kali virtual machine, this operating system, it's a Linux operating system, and I believe all Linux distributions come with a built-in text editor that you can use. So if we want to access this test.py file from the command line, we can use this text editor called VI. So if we type VI space test.py, that's going to open up our little template Python program here. So let's take a little look at the environment, at the program here and assess what it does. Okay, if you're new to programming or you haven't worked with Python before, this might not be very obvious to you, but it's not important necessarily for this lab that you understand exactly all of the syntax, because all I'm going to ask you to do for your assignment is to modify this a little bit to show that you understand how automation might work for specifically a denial of service attack. So in this program here, as we look through it, first of all, if you want to see line numbers within the VI text editor, you can hit the Shift : key. You'll notice down here that brings up this little colon in the bottom corner that allows me to put some input into the text editor and set some parameters. So if you say set space number, you'll get line numbers there, and I'm just going to put those up here so that we can refer to them. So here at the top line, we're importing a module called subprocess. That's a bunch of code that someone else has written for your benefit, and it allows you to use some predefined functions to do a particular task, okay? And basically what this program is going to do is it's going to execute a ping of a website. And the website that we're going to ping is google.com. That's the string here assigned to this host variable. And then ping, we use to do the ping, we use some built-in functions in the sub-process module like popen, and they have some parameters. I don't want you to get too engrossed in the details here. You can read a little bit more about sub-process and the functions you can use in it to see exactly how this is working. But the point is, we set up our ping here with the ping.communicate function that we call here returns a couple of values, and then we're going to tell the program here with this print command to print them out. Okay, so I'm going to put this over to one side of the screen. A little tip here for your desktops: if you want to make efficient use of space, if you haven't seen this before, you can use the mouse and grab a window and then crash it into the side, and it'll automatically fill up half of the screen for you. So we're going to keep this on the right so we see what it's doing, and then we're going to right click on the terminal icon here, click new window. We're going to take this guy, crash it to the left side of the screen so we have a little split screen going on. And then what we're going to do is we're going to over here, you'll notice again we're in the root directory, so let's change to the desktop again. Okay, and then let's just again see what we're looking at. We got test.py, and to run a Python program from the command line, you're going to type Python space test.py, the file name. All right, so we sort of very quickly described what this is doing. This program is going to ping a website and then return some information about the results of that ping. So we hit enter on the command line, and it's going to take a second to execute the ping, but it returns a printout of some useful information. Okay, so we see the IP address for google.com that we actually pinged, and we see the size of the ping message that we sent, and some information. In fact, here this is some information about the round trip time getting to that IP address, and a summary of statistics. Okay, so the point here is merely that we're using a Python program to send some traffic to google.com. Okay, so we talked a little bit, if you recall our PowerPoint presentation, we quickly described what a denial of service attack is. One type of denial of service attack is directing an overwhelming amount of traffic to a particular target and taking it down because it becomes overwhelmed. Okay, now Google has a really large capacity to handle traffic, right? It's probably the website that gets the most traffic across the entire internet. So we're not really in danger of taking Google down. But what I want you to do for this lab assignment is I want you to modify this Python code that executes the ping so that it creates either at certain time intervals or constantly a steady string of ping traffic. Okay, if we wanted to automate ping traffic to Google, if we were bad guys and and Google was some other target that was vulnerable on a much smaller scale of traffic, even if we had a reasonable target to try and overwhelm in a DOS attack, it would be really not feasible to try to do that by repeatedly running the Python program manually. All right, what we'd want to have if we were going to try to overwhelm somebody with ping traffic, which you wouldn't really do, but this is just illustrating the point. It's a ping is a particular type of traffic you can send that it's easy to write some code to do for you. So what I want you to do is, again, modify this so that you can generate a constant flow of ping traffic, or maybe at particular time intervals. I just want you to illustrate for yourself how automation might be useful in scaling up the amount of traffic that you can generate. And of course, being aspiring cybersecurity professionals, we're going to be really thinking about, most likely on the defensive side, how do we handle or set up a system so that it's not vulnerable or as vulnerable to a denial of service attack? How do we handle a denial of service attack once it begins? How do we shut it down? How do we protect our systems? It's a lot easier to think about how to do that if you understand a little more intuitively, how automation can be used to generate these high volumes of traffic. So I've said it a couple times, but I'm going to reiterate it, and of course there'll be a written description of the assignment. You can feel free to just keep all of this code, all right, but make an adjustment to this code so that you can get a high volume of traffic. Now, a couple of useful things you might want to think about in doing that. Again, the point here is, for those of you who are experienced programmers, this is a piece of cake. For those of you who are brand new, it might be so disorienting to be working on the command line environment and seeing syntax in a program that is utterly unfamiliar that it may not make a lot of sense. So a couple of hints I'll give you here is to think about, what kind of loop structure might you use to generate a constant, unending flow of traffic. Okay, even if you've had an initial programming class, you probably covered several different types of loops that you can implement to do tasks repetitively. What kind of loop might you use to get a constant flow of traffic? And if you do get a constant flow of traffic going, one thing that I'll tell you is it's not mandatory to implement within your program some control that shuts it down. You can just execute the command from the command line and then hit the Control C button to interrupt the program before it concludes. So if you get some sort of constant flow going, don't worry about implementing in your code unless you're inspired to do so. Some sort of shutdown feature, you can feel free to just do it on the command line. And again, the way to do that sort of crudely from the command line is to use the hit the Control and C keys at the same time. Okay, again, if any of this seems really unfamiliar or confusing, or if I've used a lot of terminology that I'm taking for granted that you, assuming that you know that maybe you haven't been exposed to before, we're going to do this webinar on the weekend before the hackathon, and I'd be happy to take any questions and clarify stuff. Okay? Good luck, guys.